Okay, I'm not getting any response from JNTU Kakinada. I got only response from Ideal Institute of Technology. Okay, I'll start the session. This session also talks about more on chapter 4 finite element modeling. Uh, I think on last couple of sessions we were discussing about linear versus quadratic, and uh, I would like to discuss more on that. I think in our prior sessions we were I used to tell like linear tests or linear trias are should be avoidable. So the at least next few slides will talk about why linear tests and linear trias are need to be avoided in finite element modeling for stress analysis. So let us start with 1D elements. So in 1D elements, typically we let us take 1 degree of freedom per node, 1D element with 1 degree of freedom for each node. So that will contain a displacement function like this, like a0 a plus a0 plus a1 x. So it's a complete linear function. So when you try to achieve strain from this displacement function, typically, it can be achieved using derivative of this function with respect to x, because x is 1 degrees of freedom, only 1 degrees of freedom. So we'll be derivating only with respect to x, and we'll get a constant of a1. That means when a load applied on this element, the strain in the element will be constant. So basically in finite element method, initial our primary results will be displacement. So from displacement we'll get strains and stresses. So here from displacement function we will get strain, and looks like strain is constant throughout the element, and even stress is constant throughout the element. So this is for 1D problem with the linear element formulation. Now coming to 1D elements with quadratic formulation, that means with mid-side nodes. Here I is I and J are end nodes and K is the mid-side node. So for the displacement function for 1D elements looks like this. The quadratic parameter will comes here. The quadratic equation comes here. So when you try to derive this equation, when you try to get a strain from this displacement function, that is nothing but a derivative of this function. It gives a two factors, like a1 plus a1 is constant, and this one 2a2 into x. That means for this element, if you want to get a strain, the strain will have, there is a linear variation in the strain. Like there exists a strain gradient within the element. So there exists a strain gradient within the element. That means it varies linearly across the element, because the equation we got it is a linear equation. So that is the difference between 1D element with the linear and quadratic formulation. So in linear formulation we get strain constant. In quadratic formulation we'll get a linear strain is linearly varying. Now let us look into 2D elements. So typically for 2D elements the displacement function is mentioned in polynomials. So there will be a linear, quadratic, cubic, and quartic. There are four different polynomials, but we'll be talking and will be most of the stress analysis will work around linear and quadratic. That's what we have been discussing. So here this is the Pascal triangle. So it is very easy to understand how the polynomials for 2D will be taken care. For example, like if you want to take a complete quadratic polynomial or linear polynomial, let us say I want to take a linear polynomial. So for linear polynomial, so for our easy understanding, let us stick to another subject. Square y square inverted or 4 cube y. So I want to have a complete linear polynomial for a 2D element. Okay. So the 2D element linear will comes this one, complete linear. Okay. Now I want complete quadratic. So then this one will be the quadratic. Quadratic. Okay. So that is a basic difference. So the quadratic um, formulation polynomial consists of a0 plus a1x, or here I can mention, yeah. So complete it consists of all these factors 1 x, y, x square, xy, and y square. This is a complete polynomial. Now apart from that we can have a incomplete polynomial. Incomplete polynomial in the sense um, incomplete polynomial in the sense it consists of mix of various polynomials, or it consists of partially one factor or one of the factor in the other polynomials. For example, for linear, this is the linear, and if it consists of one of these factors, either this one, either this one, either this one in the polynomial, this is called incomplete polynomial. Okay. So I need to upload the document. So I'm having some issue here. Okay. So actually, for our element formulation, one of the important requirement is even though the polynomial is incomplete, it should exhibit symmetric. That means if I take 1 x, y, and x square, so is it symmetric? No, because there is no factor related to y in quadratic. So if I take 1 x, y, and xy, then this will make it as symmetric polynomial, symmetric incomplete polynomial, because it has both x and y factors or parameters. So it should be either complete polynomial or incomplete polynomial with symmetric should be used for our element formulation. These are the two primary requirements. So now coming to tria. So for tria, triangle elements. So for triangle elements, the displacement field, we can directly take this factor. So that is nothing but here a0 plus a1x plus a2y. So when you try to integrate this displacement function, when you try to differentiate with respect to x and y, okay, we'll get strains, relevant strains, and but they are constants, a1 and a2. What does that indicates is the strain in the element is constant. It is not varying. Similarly, if strain is constant, even stress will be constant. Okay, so within the element, the strain will be constant and stress will be constant. So that is a drawback of triangle elements. When you come to quadratic elements, so quadratic element will have, so each one represents one node. So quadratic element will have one more node. So that should have one factor. So that is nothing but this one. So for quadratic it will use polynomial, incomplete polynomial with symmetric formulation. Polynomial it will take. So here this is the function, displacement function used for quadratic element. When you try to differentiate with x and y, we get a linearly varying strain in both the strains in x and y directions. So there exists a strain gradient for linearly 2D quadratic elements. So that is a basic difference between triangle element and quadratic element. So in quadratic element, across the element we can see the strain variation. Whereas in triangle element, across the element we are strain is constant. So that is the reason for stress analysis we always recommend to use quadratic elements. So now let us look into the triangle element with mid-side nodes. Why it is more advantageous? So for triangle element with mid-side nodes, it should contain 6 factors. So what are those 6 factors? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are the 6 factors. So all these things will be considered here. So all the top 6 factors will be considered for the triangle mid-side node, quadratic element. So when you try to differentiate, it will have additional factor of y here and x here. So that will predict more accurate strains in the element compared to quadratic element, now compared to brick element. So this is more accurate because the strain prediction is because it is having additional factors in both the strains, and that will give the prediction pretty close to the actual values. So now coming to quadratic element with mid-side nodes or quadratic element. So it should have it is having 8 nodes and it should have 8 factors here. Or so so straight away we can take top 6 here and we should make it symmetric. That means if we take these 8 um, things, then it looks like symmetric. Again, if you try to integrate, we'll get quadratic, even quadratic parameters also there in the this strain. When you try to differentiate with respect to x and y, we get a quadratic factors. So that will be more accurate compared to triad. So quadratic element with mid-side quad element with mid-side nodes will give more accurate results compared to all other element formulation. Now coming to tetrahedral, and again here also usually for stress analysis we won't recommend tet element with linear tet elements. That means 4-noded tet element is always avoided for the stress analysis. Now the reason is, now coming to this Pascal pyramid, similar to Pascal triangle. Pascal pyramid is used to define or get the 3-dimensional polynomials. So for typical 4-noded TET, top 4 factors straight away we can take. So here we have 1, x, y, and z. So they are all represents 4-noded tetrahedral element. So when you try to differentiate with respect to x or y or z, we'll get a constants. If you differentiate with respect to x, we'll get a1. If you differentiate with respect to y, you get a2, and if you differentiate with respect to z, we get a3. That means the strains are not accurate. They are uniform. They are uniform throughout the element, as in similar to the triad element. So this is the reason why we are avoiding linear TETs. Now coming to linear quadratic TETs or TETs with mid-side node. So it should have 10 factors. So this is the big equation here. So here top 4 will come, and then we have 6 more factors here. These things straight away come over here. So all the top 10 factors will be taken for the tetrahedral displacement field. So when you try to integrate differentiate with respect to xyz, we'll get strains, and there existed strain gradients here also, and that will give accurate, very near to the actual solution for the strains. So these TETs are pretty good for the linear for the stress analysis compared to linear TETs. So this Pascal pyramid is similar to the Pascal triangle because there is a 3-dimensional feature z is coming, so that's why we need to take care of this one. So in 8-noded hexahedral displacement field, so straight away we can take 6 here, and then top 4 we can take, and we can take xy, yz, xz, xy, xz, yz, and xyz. So this is 4 here. Here 1, 2, 3, 4 plus 3, 7, and we have 8 node, right? 8th node will be taken at this point. So this will be incomplete polynomial with perfect symmetry. This polynomial is considered for the 8-noded hexahedral displacement field. So again, if you try to integrate differentiate with respect to xyz, we'll get a additional factors. And in fact, we also have a quadratic factor will be coming over here. That will give perfect, very accurate compared to 4 noded or 10 noded TET. So that question on linear versus quadratic. So this explanation clearly tells that why trias, linear trias and linear TETs need to be avoided in the stress analysis. If you have any questions, you can raise. Otherwise, I will continue for next topic. Any questions? Okay, I'll proceed for next topic. This is on element quality. Um, so whenever we do a finite element modeling, we always need required to check whether the finite elements modeled are are in proper shape or proper condition. So similar to whatever we do for the construction of a house, or whenever you do work, whether we have done perfectly or not. So even for shell elements, even for these elements, finite elements also, there are some requirements it has to meet. So what are those requirements is that element quality. There are different requirements for the element to meet the standards. So some of the things are, and the quality it has to meet the quality standards. Basically, these elements depends upon most of the shape parameters, and these shape parameters are the functions of the element geometry. So, and element shape parameters and shape limits um, are depends upon element type and settings. User can give some settings, like you can change the settings. Suppose if there is a requirement that we have to meet a particular uh, element quality, instead of x, instead of, let us say I want to meet, ANSYS give a element quality of x, but there is a requirement from customer saying that I want to meet it by x by 2. So that user can always have an interaction with the finite element tool, to change the settings of the element quality. So when these things are defined, the finite element generated, it may generate no warnings. That means mesh quality is good, or there may be some warnings. Maybe some elements are very near to the limit, or completely the element, some of the elements, that finite element itself is getting rejected by the tool because of some error elements. So in ANSYS, if you give all those settings, that element quality settings, and if you try to mesh, if a geometry, because if you give, because of mesh size and all those things, the mesh generate a error. If a mesh generates a error element, supposed to generate error element, then that mesh will not be generated in ANSYS, saying that because of user input, error elements are getting generated. Again, you need to change the settings, like size settings. There are some other settings, so which we need to change. So it may generate warnings. If there are warning elements, it may not generate any warnings because we have generated perfect finite element model, or finite element model may not be generated because of error elements. There may be three scenarios existed in the finite element softwares while generating finite element models. Now coming to element type, the quality. if you take a one quad, 4-noded quad, this is the best and perfect in the quality. And some of the things, these are okay, means okay, very near to best, but these are very poor. These elements are very, very poor. While modeling, we need to ensure that this type of elements, it should not form in the, we need to avoid if possible. If it is not possible, then we need to see. And coming to trias, this is the best. Equilateral triangle is the best element, and then these two elements are also okay, but these elements need to be avoided. Now coming to this element quality, more on element quality. um, so the for 3D solid elements, basically brick elements, pyramid elements, wedge elements, and tetrahedral elements. Um, this element quality is performed on the faces, basically on aspect ratio, parallel deviation, and maximum corner angle. So all these three shape checking will be happening on the element faces. That means instead of element, there it may generate on the element faces. So the above quantities are computed for each face of the element, quadrilateral or triangular face. And for some types of elements, so examining on the faces may be difficult. Then what it does is it will construct cross sections in the element. Like if you see a brick mesh, it will construct cross sections, and it will measure these quantities on this cross section. For this is for tria, tet, and this is for wedge. So these things will be checked in checked for the cross sections. If it is not possible to calculate on the faces, it will calculate on the cross sections. And one question comes: what will happen? Suppose for brick element there are 8 faces, right? For brick element, it will have 8 faces. So it will have 8 faces. So each face will have, suppose it needs to check aspect ratio, it will have 8 values, right? 8 faces, it will have 8 values. So what it does is it will take worst of 8, worst shape of 8 faces it will take. So now coming to aspect ratio, what is the aspect ratio? This is the oldest shape checking for an element, and basically it will check. Uh, it is the ratio of longer side to shortest side of a rectangle, and usually for squares the best aspect ratio is 1. So if you see here, this is the best aspect ratio 1. That means this length by this length is 1. So perfect square. And in ANSYS by default will have 20 as a warning. And if you see here, this element is on the 20 aspect ratio element looks like this. So this is the aspect ratio for quad element. For tria element, usually this based on the for tria elements, the aspect ratio is calculated based on the angle measured at the corner nodes. So maximum angle by minimum angle will give the aspect ratio. So for equilateral, that's why equilateral triangle it is best. Aspect ratio is 1. So for 20 aspect ratio triangle looks like this. So this aspect ratio will be calculated for all the triad, 2D elements, triad and quad, and also for brick element, tect element, pyramid element, and wedge element. So this is for 2D, this is for 3D. So this aspect ratio is very important quality checking feature which is used for both 2D and 3D for all type of elements. And now coming to parallel deviation, there is another shape checking called as parallel deviation. Basically, this parallel deviation is checked for the quadrilaterals of quadrilaterals. That means aspect ratio can be checked for triad and quad, and for 3D it can be checked for brick, deck, pyramid, and wedges. So, but this parallel deviation can be checked only for quadrilateral elements and 3D elements which have quadrilateral faces. So 2D quad, 3D quad faces. That means quad faces means for brick it will have all quad, right? All quad faces. For pyramid it will have only one quad, and for wedge it will have three quad faces. So this parallel deviation is purely checked for either for quads, for 2D elements quads, for 3D quad faces. So what it does is first of all it will ignore the mid-side nodes and it will construct unit vectors. That means the length of this vector, this vector, this vector, this vector, all these four vectors will be same. It will construct unit vectors, and then it will each pair, like if you see here, the opposite pairs 1 and 3, they will do a dot product, and from there we'll get an angle. What is that meaning? So how we'll do dot product? Suppose I have two vectors here, A and B, and cos theta. If I want to do dot product of A and B, A vector, it is nothing but A dot B dot, this is angle theta, cos theta. Okay. So whatever we get it here, then we need to calculate the cosine of this value. So here we have a unit vectors. So 1 into 1, for 1 and 3 I am doing. Okay. And the angle between the unit vector is 0. So cos theta is 1. So total 1. So cos inverse of 1 is nothing but 0. So angle is 0. Similarly, for 2 and 4, the angle between these two vectors is 60 degrees, and we get a parallel deviation of 60 degrees. This is how parallel deviation is calculated in elements, quadrilateral elements. Now coming to the parallel deviation, 0 is the best. See here, this is perfect square and we get a 0 parallel deviation, and it is best. And here we got 70 degrees. parallel deviation, it's a warning. And here we got a 100 degrees and it's a warning. But exceeding 100, we'll get 150 or 170, 170. These are error elements. Now coming to maximum corner angle, the maximum angle between the adjacent edges is computed using corner node positions. Basically, it will check the angles at the corner nodes. So the best for tria is 60 degrees and best for quadrilateral is 90 degrees. So maximum corner angle 60 for tria is the best. Maximum corner angle 90 degrees is best for quadrilateral. So if you see this 165 degrees for tria, it's a warning, and 140 degrees is a warning, but 180 for brick hex is error. The reason is it is almost straight line here, and it is a error element. So now the important thing in error elements is Jacobian ratio. Uh, Basically, we need to understand what exactly is the Jacobian ratio. Actually the Jacobian is a Jacobian is a thing which relates to the element length in global system to the element length in the natural coordinate systems. Remember, will be having three coordinate systems. One is global coordinate system, one is local coordinate system, another is natural coordinate system. Natural coordinate system usually varies from -1 to 1. This is related to shape functions we have discussed some time back. So this Jacobian will establish relation between global coordinate system to the natural coordinate system in defining element edge length. So Jacobian ratio is a typical shape checking factor which is checked for all the elements except triangles and tetrahedrals. That these except triangles and tetrahedrals that are linear. That means if there are trias and tetrahedrals which doesn't have mid-side nodes, the Jacobian ratio will not be calculated. Similarly, these triangles and tetrahedrals, if they have mid-side nodes, but these mid-side nodes are perfectly centered, then also it won't calculate the Jacobian ratio. So this is very important. So Jacobian cannot be calculated for trias and tetrahedrals which are linear, and also it won't calculate for trias and tetrahedrals with mid-side nodes which are placed perfectly at the center. That means, suppose if I draw a equilateral triangle, this is a linear element. Jacobian will not be calculated for this element, as well as if nodes are perfectly placed at the center, also it won't calculate. This is same. This will be held true for tetrahedral also. A high ratio indicates that mapping between element space and real space becomes computationally unreliable. If you have high Jacobian ratio, the results are not reliable. That is why Jacobian ratio is very important. Before proceeding with analysis, we need to check the Jacobian ratio. So what exactly Jacobian ratio is? Actually at each location, basically, like if I take nodes, okay, let us take a quad element, okay, at each location, uh, com, com, So at each location, determinant of Jacobian will be evaluated at each location. So basically, there will be for quad element there will be four RJs or determinant of Jacobians will be there, and the Jacobian ratio is maximum to maximum Jacobian to minimum Jacobian in a particular element. That will give a Jacobian ratio. So for a ideally shaped element like perfectly square, the Jacobian ratio will be constant in all the locations, all four locations. So for example, for Traya, it's a perfectly shaped. So it will have Jacobian ratio 1 because the ratio Jacobians will be constant at all the locations. And these are some this is warning element which is 30, and this is warning element 1000. Why there is a big difference? If it looks like same, but if you look closely here, these edges are touching here, so that will result warning elements, yeah, error elements. Now coming to just I want to explain one more thing. So this is our uh, displacement function with respect to global coordinate system, and this is our displacement function of natural coordinate system. If you see, it varies from -1 to 1, and Jacobian factor will come here. So basically this Jacobian factor is used to convert local coordinate system to when Jacobian will when we need to convert this global coordinate system into natural coordinate system, so we need to have Jacobian. This Jacobian will go other way into inverse. That's why that determinant is we need to check. So higher the value, it will reach the stresses will become 0, or the coordinate system will become natural coordinate system developed may not be perfect because of the element shape. So now coming to Jacobian ratio for quadrilateral, um, one is perfectly square or rectangle. There is no issue here. This is the best, and this is the warning elements. Uh, this is one type of warning element, and this is one type of a warning element. If you see this, as these nodes move towards the element, the Jacobian ratio will increase. Same is the case here. In trias also, these these edges is trying to move towards center of the element, then the Jacobian ratio will try to increase. Similarly here, these edges are moving towards center, that will lead more Jacobian ratio. And here we are getting big Jacobian because they are touching here. The edges are touching here. Similarly here, this is perfect. So here the edges are moving towards center. That is the reason we are getting high Jacobian ratio. Here the edges are touching. That is the reason we are getting pretty high Jacobian ratio compared to this element. And here this is perfect square, and here if you see, this node is trying to move towards center, and this will yielding more Jacobian ratio. and here actually it's becoming straight line. These two edges are becoming collinear, so that will become a error element. So there is another shape factor which we need to check is warping factor. Warping factor is computed and tested for some quadrilateral shell elements and quadrilateral faces of bricks, wedges, and pyramids. Similar to uh, parallel deviation, here also this warping factor is usually checked for only quads or 3D elements with which are having quadrilateral faces. So basically for brick element it will have eight faces. For wedge element it will have three faces. For pyramid element it will have one face. So this warping factor is checked for both 3D and 2D elements only for which are having only 2D, only quadrilateral faces, quad faces. So here the a high factor may indicate the condition of underlying element formation cannot handle, or it will generate spurious results, which are not, results may not be accurate if we have a high warping factor. And this warping factor is calculated based on corner node positions and other available data. Let us see what are the things involved in calculating this warping factor. So basically, if you take a typical quadrilateral element, so here average element normal location uh, average element normal will be created at the element center, and if our element this element may be curvature, this will be this element will be projected onto the plane normal to this vector. So this complete element may not be normal to the vector, but there may be one plane which is normal. There will be one plane which is normal to this vector. So that in that plane, this element will be projected. So basically, the difference of height between two between the difference in the height at the ends of the element edge is computed. If you take here, so here this is our element. Let me zoom it. Here, so here dashed line indicates projected plane, and this regular line indicates element. So basically, the difference between uh, nodes at these locations will give the total height. So basically, this is h. This will be also h from the projected plane. So the so total it will be 2h. Okay. So the area of warping factor of the element is computed as edge height difference by the square root of the projected area. The projected area square root of this projected area. So the best possible warping factor for a flat quadrilateral is 0. So it is always advisable to have a zero warping factor for the elements if we need to have best elements. So this is the best there is a little deviation here and the deviation is getting increased. That means 0 is like in plane, and slowly here if you see here the node is moved little bit up. So and point 1 here it is quietly it's clear from here onwards it is visible. So point 1 is a warning for the warping factor. So and from 1 onwards it will give error elements. So these are the, and for this is these are this is for brick elements. So for the perfect square cube it is 0, and we have point 2 and point 4. Point 2 represents when twisting on top this top face. So approximately point 2 of a warping factor for this element and point 4 for the this element. Basically here this element is getting twisted approximately at 22.5 degrees, and this element is twisted around approximately around 45 degrees. So this 22.5 degree is seems to be acceptable limit, but 45 is not acceptable and it will be rejected by the finite element software. So these are the various shape factors we will be checking for the element mesh quality, and definitely our finite element model should meet all these factors, and also at the area of interest warnings needs to be avoided. So wherever the area of interest is there, suppose if I, for example, if I do a simple geometry, plate with hole, this is what the basic analysis we do. So usually for this analysis, the high stress will be around the bolt hole. Here compressive, here tensile. So it is always advised to have best elements around this location. So even if you have warning elements at this location, it's okay, because we are very much interested at this location. So if our area of interest, it is always advised to have at the area of interest, we should have very high quality mesh. And one more important thing is, at the area of interest, stress need to be converged. So that topic will be covered in the next session on the mesh convergence. But this session completes discussion on element mesh quality. Now coming to meshing, we have been discussing about free mesh, mapped mesh, tech sweep mesh. What is the basic difference? Suppose if I take a simple sector model and I want to do mesh. So I want to put a brick elements here. So there are two ways. One is we need to take the face. This is the face, and we'll put quad elements. So here we put free mesh. Free mesh looks like this, and then we'll mesh. Then we'll sweep this area which is meshed along this line. So if you take cross section of any at any place, if you check any these elements, you'll get same type of cross section everywhere. So you can check each layer. Any layer will get same type of cross section, same type of elements at the cross section. Basically, these elements are swept along this length. So this is how we need to do sweep meshing. And coming to map meshing, so this is how map mesh looks like. Perfect. This mesh is perfect, and if you this map mesh will be swept similar to what we have done previously. So this is how we will be doing sweep meshing. Uh, Now we'll be talking about more of tech meshing, right? So let us assume this is very highly complicated model. So whenever there is a requirement of doing tech meshing, if we will do tech meshing when there is no possibility of putting quad mesh, then we usually go for tech mesh. So one of the important requirement for tech meshing is any geometry we need to select all the outer areas and we need to mesh the outer areas with 6 noded triangle elements. Why 6 noded triangle elements? First is we need to use 10 noded tech. So in 10 noded tech, this is a linear tech and 10 noded tech consists of mixed nodes. That means if I take this space, I will be having 6 nodes, right? So we need to select this 6 noded tria and we need to mesh all the areas. So then question comes, what will happen if I select 3 noded tria and uh, mesh with 10 noded tria? So what will happen is when you try to mesh with 3 noded tria, suppose this on the surface when you mesh with the 3 noded tria, so there won't be any mid-side nodes on the surface. So mid-side nodes will be at the inside. And one more important thing is basically one requirement of using mid-side nodes is to get a very accurate results. Second thing is to capture the geometry. Suppose if I want to put uh, trials or linear elements, it will look like this. So it won't capture the geometry. Suppose if same elements, if I use with the mid-side nodes, then it will try to capture the geometry with the mid-side node. So here also first it won't form mid-side node on the surface area, and also it won't capture the geometry. So it is like a wastage of using 3 noded tria. So whatever requirement we have, it will fail over here. And then once you mesh with 6 noded tria on surfaces, then you use um, volume mesh using 10 noded tech. So this is how we usually do tech meshing in ANSYS. I think similar method is followed even in hypermesh. I'm not sure about other finite element softwares like Abacus and Astran and Patron. I think this concludes my session for today. We will discuss again on coming Tuesday on more on mesh convergence. Then that will complete our uh, chapter 4 on finite element modeling. Then after that we'll be discussing more on loads and boundary conditions. So these are the reference books, and you can write to me if you have any questions. Any questions you can feel free to raise. I'll try to give answers. Uh, any questions? JNTU Kakinada just opened interactive session. If you have an interactive session, we can. Any questions? Okay. Thank you very much, and have a nice day. We'll meet again on Tuesday.